Good morning, Ginger, and good morning, everyone.
Hello, Callum. Hello, everybody. This is very fun.
I'm so glad to be setting the table for our conversation today because we have such a diverse mix of industries here, but a lot of people dealing with the same kind of people management challenges right now that you're on the front lines of. And I think a big one that's top of mind for many of us is that post-pandemic war for talent, when it seemed like companies were hiring like mad, sometimes throwing out really generous raises and benefits, is subsiding now, and companies are much more focused on efficiency, getting the most out of the employees that they already have. And what I'm wondering is where you sit, what's the key to preserving a positive corporate culture, keeping your people happy at a time of efficiency when they might feel like, oh my goodness, there's so much more on my plate right now?
Yeah, a great question, Callum. So to me, it is, and probably many of you in here, is trying to keep tabs on how engaged the employees are. And so we are regularly measuring engagement and doing pulse surveys to find out, like, are you in it? Are you, focused on, are you excited? Do you recommend Biogen as a place to work? Do you want to come to work every day? Or maybe not come to work, but be at work every day. And so engagement to me is the absolute thing that we need to keep measuring. And to the extent that we have a drops in some market or in some function, then we need to go in and find out, okay, what's going on. And then depending upon what we find, we can react to it and hopefully do something about it. But the flip side of that, which you mentioned, is people feeling overworked. So there's also in some of the surveys that we have learned things are a little too hard. The processes are too complicated. So that's also a big focus area, is to how do we make things simpler and take work out of the system. And and this is an ongoing sort of struggle. Well, not struggle, but work that we're working on to make things easier and stop doing some things that we have done just because we always did them. I
noticed a moment ago you said be at work, not necessarily come to work.
Yes.
That's a key, right? Because when I talk to workers about their own career satisfaction, two big themes come up above all others. Compensation, people want to be well paid and they want good benefits. And also flexibility, right? In when and where they work. So how are you managing that at Biogen right now? We're 4 years onto this disruption and I don't think it's settled yet.
Well, and I think, as I've mentioned to you before, I've talked more about the return to office. It was first return to work, remember, and then it was return to the office, and I don't know what it's called now. So many conversations on this topic, and I have so it was interesting because I've had two bosses during this period, and one was, very focused on we need people in the office. My current CEO is less so. And we have, we kind of early in his tenure, determined, okay, the 5-week in an office is dead, never coming back. But my philosophy has pretty much always been treat people like adults, measure them on their outcomes, and try and have people come together sometimes, but it doesn't necessarily need to be every week or every Tuesday, but it could be 1 week a month, and then also let managers manage their own teams. So rather than at Biogen coming up with, here's our one approach that we're going to have at all the different sites around the world, we've said, okay, Germany, you decide what's best for Germany based on the needs of your employees and manage it locally. And so we've got a lot of variations in sort of how people are, when they're working, how they're working, et cetera. And I think it's working quite well.
I see wide ranges of approaches on that, though, right? Because some companies think fair means to have the same policy for everyone. It sounds like at Biogen, it's more like what we consider fair is what's necessary for your job function or your geography or what you're managing.
Well, absolutely. And we've always had the situation, like many of you, where we have people working in labs, we have people working in manufacturing that have no choice, but they actually have to be in the facility. And so we've always had a little bit of unfairness, but it had nothing even to do with COVID. It had to do, when we're giving people days off. So we do manage it based on the role first, but then those roles that have more flexibility, we've really encouraged the flexibility. And there in certain, I've certainly read a lot about in cases where you're not treating people like adults and saying you have to come in, the engagement drops, no question.
And when it comes to engagement, another big theme that comes through in my conversations with rank and file workers is they want to feel a sense of mission. They want a sense of purpose when they come to work. On one level, I imagine that's pretty easy at a company like yours. You're producing life-saving therapies in a lot of cases. On the other hand, it can take years and years and years for that to actually come to fruition, and sometimes you never actually realize the dream, right? A drug in the pipeline doesn't reach the finish line. And a lot of you all probably have similar long-term goals at your company. So how do you keep people energized and feeling that sense of purpose just through the daily grind?
Well, as you mentioned, we're very fortunate because we're a very mission-driven organization because we are, creating medicine that helps people, helps patients. But what we do on purpose is we bring patients. So when we have events, we bring patients. So, any kind of team meet, not every single team meeting, but often we'll have patients and so that our employees can meet them and see how our products are helping improve their life. But we also, the life cycle is long, but we're a team. And for example, in the last 12 months, we've launched 3 new products. And so that's very motivating and exciting. And even if you're a research scientist that's working on, some particular ALS product, we still want them to have the energy and excitement about the fact that we have a new Alzheimer's product. So we are, regularly educating everybody on all aspects of the business. Progress we're making in the R&D pipeline, progress we're making in the commercial organization. So we're keeping that patient story and that impact very much front and center.
I love that idea of bringing patients in-house for those meetings. And in other sectors, perhaps the equivalent would be bring in your customers or bring in your clients, right? It would be re-energizing, right, to see the fruits of your labor. And I bet that there's some ideas that come out of it too when you listen to what people's needs and hopes are, right?
Absolutely, because you don't realize, this is what the situation is with somebody who is in a wheelchair and things like that. So we get a lot of energy and ideas from many of our people. For example, we have a drug for spinal muscular atrophy and multiple sclerosis, and learning to kind of walk in their shoes has been very helpful to people, not just in their day-to-day work, but also what they're doing outside of work. And so we very much encourage and support our employees to do volunteering and to get involved in their communities, and oftentimes it's related to some of our patient populations.
Ginger, would you tell us a little bit about career development and retention efforts at Biogen and some takeaways for the rest of us? I recently read a large-scale survey that surprised me. 41 million young workers surveyed, millennials and Gen Zers. And as it turned out, Gen Z workers are staying in their jobs 18% longer than millennials were at the same career stage, which kind of runs counter to the popular narrative of just career hopping all over the place. So you can't take that for granted, but it does suggest there's an opportunity. People want to stay if they feel that they're stimulated and can advance in-house. So how do you meet that opportunity?
Well, it's an interesting question between the generations. Maybe it's because HR has been so good at building up development, right?
Listen, if you don't toot your own horn, sometimes nobody does. So, yeah.
But honestly, when I started in this industry, in this career, it was a long time ago. I won't say when. But that was when the war for talent, the McKinsey war for talent papers were coming out, and we were, spending a lot of time and energy thinking about how do we develop talent, and how do we get managers to care about developing talent. So maybe we actually have made some progress. But at Biogen, what we do is it is absolutely the job of the manager, and we have what we call Thrive conversations. And it's in Workday, and managers get a reminder, it's time for you to have your Thrive conversation with your employees, and we've taught them how to ask questions about how are you doing? What do you want? And having this kind of dialogue, and I think managers are they're not perfect, as I'm sure you all appreciate, but they're getting much better at having the kinds of dialogues with people on what do they need, what do they want. And then we have a lot of even short-term programs for people to be able to, you want to try something in a different function? We have something called an Orbit program. And again, it's something that if you have a need in your department or your team, you can say, I have an Orbit that's going to be 3 months, and you're going to be working on mergers and acquisitions and doing analytics for whatever. And then anybody in the company can apply for the Orbit, and then they can do that job either full-time or maybe in addition to their current job. So that's a short way that we can kind of get people to try out new and different things. But we also are very, very, very focused on let's move people around. And so the managers need to know what their employees want. And then we need to have the other managers being open to saying, okay, there's somebody over there in France who might be actually very interested to go and work for us in Japan or something like that.
So the idea being, if you're itching for a change, you want to try something, you don't have to go external for that. You have a chance to try it out here in-house. I'm curious now, you mentioned your long career, and again, we don't say how long, but you have worked. I know a lot of it's been in life sciences. You've also been the Chief Human Resources Officer at Dunkin' Brands, totally different type of business. And it means that you've had a hand in setting the corporate culture for everyone from PhD scientists to people who are just starting their careers, maybe working an after-school job in high school. So I'm curious, as you compare and contrast that, I mean, are there kind of universal principles for people leadership that apply across the spectrum of career stage and industry, or does it require a really tailored approach to every sector
I think it's
and job
probably
stage?
both. So I think that, yes, there are certain things that apply, and it's this notion of having a dialogue. And I think I may have told you this story. I have a son who's in the workforce who was complaining about something, and I said, well, did you talk to your manager? Oh, no. And so it's that, yeah, and if you can't get the employees to talk to the managers, maybe you can get the managers who are a little bit more mature, possibly, to talk to the employees. So this notion of having an ongoing dialogue is very helpful. But clearly, some type of workforces are much more transient, and the best you may do is have somebody for a summer and then may be able to get them back the next summer. So there's some common themes, but then there's some particular things that you need to do for different workforces. But one of the things that I do believe in is trying to have quick learnings. And so that it's not as if we have to spend 4 weeks or 3 days or whatever, but being able to quickly have content available that is relevant to whoever needs to learn something.
When it comes to hiring and retention right now, what's your assessment of the state of corporate DEI efforts right now? It feels like there's a wide range of approaches. We see some companies that are saying they're very much committed as ever. Others are walking back from DEI goals. And of course, this is all playing out against the backdrop of the Supreme Court's decision to roll back affirmative action. And we've seen some colleges reporting this fall mixed results as far as the diversity of their enrolling classes, which has some business leaders worrying about a pipeline issue coming in a few years. So how do you see things?
Well, we have absolutely stood firm in terms of our DE&I beliefs, practices, and we haven't rolled back anything. Because when I came to Biogen 7 years ago, we were already quite advanced with our DE&I work. We have employee network groups. We have all kinds of things that we are doing with our workforce and potential workforce. We have a community lab where we bring in school children from Somerville and Cambridge, and we're trying to build the pipeline of people interested in STEM careers. And we have not changed our approach, and we even had a discussion as recently as yesterday about whether we needed to change a few words in our code of business conduct, and it was a resounding no. Because we really, it's part of our culture. It's part of who we are. Inclusion is one of our cultural essentials. And we have, the backing and support of our CEO as well as our board to continue to, focus on these things because we believe it's the right thing. We believe it's going to help us to be higher performers. So we really haven't, fortunately, had to roll any of that back.
If I can just pull out one specific way that this manifests in a lot of companies, networking and referrals when it comes to hiring, right? Because at this point in HR, and you probably know this better than I, you can be inundated by hundreds, maybe even 1,000 applicants for every one job posting that goes up. It's really hard to weed through. So on the one hand, if you have an employee referral program, that can be kind of a shortcut, right? You can speed up the recruitment process, and to have somebody you already like and trust in-house vouching for this new hire, that can suggest you're going to get somebody who's a good fit. The risk, of course, though, is that if you don't have a terribly diverse pool of employees, it becomes a perpetuating cycle. People tend to refer people like themselves. So what's the appropriate role of networking and referrals?
Well, I mean, we believe in referrals. But we also, you made a very important point. If you don't have a diverse organization, then you may get into difficulty with referrals. However, if you do have diversity, then you can continue to increase that through referrals from, all of your talent. But when we have a referral, they go through the exact same process as somebody who has applied, kind of online or in a normal way. So it's not as if we automatically I know Callum, just put him in that job. We would not stand for that. So we actually really do want referrals, but again, they're going to go through the exact same process as anybody else.
And in the moment that we have left, Ginger, the other hot button issue that's really top of mind for a lot of the workers I talk to is artificial intelligence. I talk to people who are totally freaked out about it. They feel threatened by it. Others think AI is going to make their jobs a whole lot easier. What do you hear, and how are you managing those delicate conversations?
Well, I'm going to bring it back to one of your earlier questions where people are feeling a little bit, there's too much work. And so what I hear is that people are very excited about the potential for AI to actually help improve process, make things faster, and especially within the HR world is like, help us to not have to do all of this kind of ongoing administration stuff and make these things easier. So there's great progress with chatbots in HR to be able to answer the basic questions of employees. And so I'd say more people are excited about it than are nervous about it from those that I talk to.
Well, Ginger, we're going to yield the floor in Senate parlance, but thank you for your real human insight and intelligence this morning.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your morning, everyone. Ginger, thank you.
Thank you, Callum.